My life didn't transform overnight, and it wasn't because of a stroke of luck. It changed because of a decision, a simple, grounded choice. Not a revolution, not a dramatic epiphany, but a quiet moment of clarity where I confronted myself honestly and asked the most piercing question of all. How much longer am I going to live like this? Maybe you've stood in front of that same mirror, staring into tired eyes that carry the weight of broken promises and unfulfilled potential. Maybe you've woken up day after day in a body that feels heavier than it should, with a mind that's foggy, carrying the invisible burden of unfinished goals and the echo of yesterday's should-haves. You want to change. You keep telling yourself you'll start on Monday. You make plans, sketch out goals, set alarms, and get that first hit of excitement, only to be dragged back into the familiar cycle. Procrastination, distraction, regret, and another promise to do better next time. I lived that loop not for weeks, but for years. And it wasn't because I didn't want to change. It was because I kept starting with the wrong mindset. Like many of us, I believed change had to be massive. A complete overhaul, a rigid diet, a strict workout plan, reading a book a week, waking up before the sun every single day. But it was precisely that all or nothing thinking that held me in place, running in circles, always sprinting, never arriving. Then one day, not marked by fireworks or cheers, I decided to try something different. I stopped chasing perfection. I stopped trying to remake my entire life in one go. I chose 5 small, almost ordinary habits. Nothing flashy, nothing difficult, but I committed to doing them for just 7 days, 1 week. That's it. And here's what stunned me. In those 7 days, I didn't just reclaim a few hours or tick off a few boxes. I rediscovered something I had lost without realizing: belief in myself. That's why I'm sharing this with you now. Not to boast, not to give you a magic formula, but so you can grasp one important truth. Change doesn't have to roar, it just needs to be real. You don't need 12 months. You don't need a transformation montage. You need 1 week, a week of presence, of truth, of following through. And more than anything, you need to begin before you're ready. Readiness is a myth we cling to because it gives us permission to delay. You have to begin while you still doubt, while you still fear, while everything inside you whispers, not yet. Because it's in doing, in showing up when it's inconvenient, that you build the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. The first habit I chose was intentionally simple, and I want you to start there too. Choose one habit, not 5, not 10, just one. Something small but meaningful. Something that matters to you. Then do it every single day for the next 7 days. Don't overthink it. Don't build a complex spreadsheet or vision board. Don't create a list so long your brain shuts down before you begin. Just one thing, that's all. Here's what I realized, and it might surprise you. You don't need 10 habits. You need 1 habit, repeated 10 times. That's where the shift begins. Repetition builds strength. Repetition builds confidence. And confidence, when rooted in action, starts to rewire how you see yourself. I remember telling myself, if I can do this one thing every day for 1 week, I'll know I can do anything. And I meant it, because once I proved to myself I could follow through, I began to rewrite my identity. I stopped saying, I'm trying to change. I started saying, this is who I am now. Habits don't just reshape your calendar, they reshape your self-image. And when your identity begins to shift, even slightly, your whole life starts to shift with it. You can begin with something as basic as reading 10 pages a day, or walking for 5 minutes, or drinking a glass of warm water each morning. Maybe it's waking up just 15 minutes earlier. It doesn't have to be hard. In fact, it shouldn't be. Choose something so achievable, your brain can't say no. A task so simple that it removes all resistance. That's how real change begins, with quiet, repeatable actions. Think of James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. His journey didn't start with ambition to become a best-selling author. He simply began writing 1 page per day. 1 page, no fanfare, no perfection, just presence and practice. From that 1 page repeated daily emerged a career, a voice, and a global impact. That's the power of small actions compounded by consistency. But before you try to read more, exercise more, or wake up earlier, there's one habit that must come first: showing up for yourself. Regardless of how tired you are, how busy the day is, or how uninspired you feel, you show up. That's the habit that makes every other habit possible. It's the anchor, the core, the decision to follow through when no one else is watching, especially when it's inconvenient. That's what builds the foundation for long-term growth. If you feel stuck, if you're exhausted by promises that fade into thin air, then let this be your reset. Choose one habit, commit for 7 days. Don't think about month-long plans or year-long ambitions. Just 1 week, just one action, with enough seriousness and enough consistency to prove to yourself that change is still possible, that you still have agency over your life. And sometimes that one decision is enough to open the door to everything else you've been hoping to become. When I began my own transformation, I made a mistake that I see repeated everywhere. I tried to do too much. The second a spark of motivation hit, I'd fill a journal with tasks, fix my sleep, eat cleaner, exercise daily, read more, meditate, budget, call family more often, build better boundaries. And while all those goals were meaningful, trying to execute all of them at once meant I stuck with none of them. I'd dive in full of fire and crash just as fast. Then I'd return to square one, weighed down by the disappointment of another failed attempt. That first week, the one that finally worked, came not because I did more, but because I did less. No multitasking, no big declarations, no spreading my focus thin. I chose just one habit, something so small it might seem trivial. But I knew, if I could do this one thing every day for 7 days, despite my old habits and resistance, I would be sending myself a powerful message. I can regain control. And once you prove that to yourself, the door to change no longer feels like it's locked from the outside. What that habit is doesn't matter as much as how you approach it. It could be 10 minutes of reading, 5 minutes of stretching, drinking water on time, journaling 1 line each night, sleeping before 11 p.m. The specific action is less important than 2 things. It must be small enough that you have no excuse to skip it, and relevant enough that you know it's aligned with the person you want to become. I call this strategic focus, the art of directing energy toward one point, rather than diffusing it across dozens of half-hearted attempts. Because the truth is, most of us don't fail due to laziness. We fail because we scatter our effort. Imagine trying to shoot 5 arrows at once. Even if you're strong, they won't fly straight. But aim one arrow with care. It has power. It has direction. Choosing one habit is how you start training your internal compass. It's how you practice being present. It's how you develop the clarity needed for future success. I remember exactly what I chose, writing down 3 things I was grateful for each morning. Not because I was chasing positivity, but because I was tired of starting each day feeling rushed and reactive. I wanted to anchor myself. Just 3 short lines. That's it. Yet within days, I noticed the difference. My mornings felt calmer, my thinking clearer. That tiny shift began affecting everything else. Not because I was doing more, but because I was thinking differently. Don't underestimate the power of small things done repeatedly. You don't have to do something impressive. You just have to do something consistent. If you read 10 pages daily for 30 days, that's 300 pages, a full book. If you walk 5 minutes daily, that's over 2.5 hours in a month. What looks small in a day becomes massive in a year. The world won't always applaud you for these small victories, but your subconscious will. Each time you keep a promise, you tell your inner self, I can be trusted. That's how confidence is built. Not from external praise, but from quiet, persistent follow-through. And once you do it for 3 days, then 5, then 7, you start seeing yourself differently. You're no longer a person who only dreams of change. You become someone who shows up, who follows through, who keeps building, quietly and powerfully. So if you're unsure where to begin, pause, breathe, ask yourself, What is one small action I can do every day that aligns with who I want to become? Then forget the lists, forget the diagrams. Just start. Keep it simple, keep it steady, and most importantly, keep going. Because in the end, change doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks for presence. There was a truth I resisted for far too long, a truth that hovered beneath the surface of every failed attempt, every broken promise, every burst of motivation that fizzled into nothing. Most of the times I failed to change, it wasn't because I lacked the ability or the knowledge. It was because I was lying to myself. I told myself I was too busy when in reality I just didn't prioritize. I convinced myself I'd start when life got less chaotic. But when that calm never came, I let the days slip away into mindless habits and hollow distractions. I made excuses that I needed more motivation, more clarity, more external support. But deep down, I was avoiding the one thing that mattered most: true commitment. Because when you're genuinely ready to change, you don't look for more reasons to delay, you look for ways to begin. And for me, the turning point wasn't a triumphant declaration or a dramatic breakdown. It was an unadorned, silent moment when I finally sat with myself, peeled back the comforting justifications, and asked one brutally honest question: am I really living in alignment with what I say I want? The answer was painful, and that pain, raw, unfiltered, uncomfortable, was what finally cracked the illusion I had built around my potential. You cannot change what you're unwilling to face. You can't heal what you keep pretending isn't broken. All of us have made promises in moments of inspiration: to wake up early, to eat better, to finish that book, to get organized, to be more focused. But when the glow of motivation fades, we often slip back into the same cycles, cushioned by the lie that it's okay to start over tomorrow. The real damage isn't in the missed workout or the ignored task. It's in the erosion of trust, not with others, but with ourselves. Each time we break a small promise, even if no one else knows, it leaves a mark, a tiny fracture in our inner integrity. And over time, these small fractures add up until we stop believing in our own words. That's what truly cripples growth. Not failure, but self-doubt born from repeated self-abandonment. I know what it's like to tell yourself, "I'll start tomorrow," not once or twice, but hundreds of times until the phrase becomes a reflex, an escape route. And each time that tomorrow never quite arrives, it gets postponed, disguised, repackaged into the next convenient excuse, until one day quietly without announcement, I stopped talking. I stopped announcing new goals, stopped telling others about my plans. I didn't draw a roadmap or download an app or design a new morning routine. I simply sat with myself and decided, this time I won't make noise. I'll make movement. I chose one small thing and began, silently, privately, without validation or recognition. And in that quiet space, I discovered a surprising kind of power. Because when you're no longer performing for the world, you start living in alignment with your inner truth. When your actions stop being about appearance and start being about commitment, even the smallest step becomes sacred. This, I learned, is the heart of real change. Sincerity. Not perfection, not public accountability, not systems or hacks, but an unshakable honesty with yourself. When you stop making promises you're not prepared to keep, you begin to respect your own words again. You stop performing discipline and start practicing it. You stop announcing your intent and start embodying it. And it doesn't require you to become a machine or to adopt a Spartan lifestyle. It just requires you to be real. Because the most dangerous form of self-deception isn't in what we say. It's in our habits. It's when we say we don't have time, but spend hours scrolling. When we say we'll start on Monday, then defer it another week. These aren't harmless slips. They're patterns that quietly strip away the trust we have in ourselves. And without trust, no goal, no matter how noble, can truly take root. So I urge you to pause, not to criticize yourself, but to examine. How many promises have you made that you've actually followed through on? How many times have you allowed convenience or comfort to rewrite your commitment? This isn't about guilt, it's about truth. And only when you start from a place of truth can you begin to build something lasting. You don't need to tell the world. You don't need applause. You just need to look in the mirror and be honest with one person, the one staring back at you each morning. For years, I thought I needed more willpower, more discipline, more motivation. But what I really needed, what many of us need, is honesty. Brutal, clear, loving honesty about what we're doing, what we're avoiding, and who we're becoming in the process. Because when you start from that place, even if the truth stings, you finally have the clarity to choose your next step consciously. And that's when change becomes real. Not as an aesthetic, not as a temporary high, but as something with depth, with roots, with soul. There is a power that comes from small, consistent action, but only if it's aligned with who you truly want to become. And that's the paradox. We often think change starts with grand moves, but it actually begins with integrity. Not the integrity others demand from us, but the kind we owe to ourselves. If you say you'll wake early, get up. If you say you'll move your body, step outside. If you say you want to change, do something about it, even if it's just a 5-minute shift. And do it not for recognition, but to remind yourself, I am no longer lying to myself. That, right there, is where everything begins. The foundation of transformation is not in systems or schedules, but in being honest enough to admit, I'm ready to stop betraying myself. For a long time, I clung to the belief that transformation required a lightning bolt, some defining event that would jolt me awake and force everything to change. I waited for the cinematic moment, the breakthrough, the emotional crescendo that would launch me into a new version of myself. But real life doesn't work like that. There is no soundtrack, no script, no guaranteed catalyst. Most days are quiet, most days are ordinary, and within that ordinariness lies your opportunity. A series of small decisions made consistently, without flair, without drama, that begin to slowly but undeniably shift the arc of your life. When I finally let go of the idea that I needed a miracle, I began asking better questions. Not, how can I change everything all at once? But what's the smallest thing I can do today that moves me forward? That shift from intensity to consistency changed everything. It reminded me of something I once read about Jerry Seinfeld. Every day he committed to writing one joke. Not a great joke, not a perfect joke, just one. Then he'd mark an X on a wall calendar. His rule was simple: don't break the chain. And over time, that chain of X's became not just a measure of output, but a visible testament to discipline. The kind of discipline that doesn't require motivation, just presence, just repetition. So I applied the same principle to my life. I stopped chasing the ideal day. I stopped waiting to feel ready. I chose one action, committed to it daily, and began tracking it. Each mark became more than a tick. It became a statement. I showed up again. And slowly those marks formed a chain. And that chain gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stability, a sense of groundedness. Because even when everything else felt uncertain, I knew this. I kept my word to myself today. And that's enough. This is the truth we often overlook. The difference between people who grow and those who stay stuck isn't talent or opportunity. It's frequency. You could do one 8-hour sprint and burn out, or you could do 30 minutes a day and build something sustainable. The drop of water doesn't pierce the stone through force, but through persistence. Over time, quietly. That's how lives change. Not in sudden eruptions, but in small, steady decisions that accumulate until one day you look up and realize you've become someone new. And yet so many of us fall into the trap of expecting too much, too soon. We build unrealistic blueprints, try to execute them all at once, and then collapse under the weight of our own ambition. What we need isn't to do more, it's to do less, better. To pick one thing we can do daily, without force, without punishment, and stick to it until it becomes second nature. That's how you build a habit. And habits, not hype, are what create transformation. If you're wondering where to begin, start with this. Think of one area of your life you'd like to improve. Your health, your finances, your ability to focus, your relationships. Then, instead of designing a master plan, ask, what can I do every day in just 5 to 10 minutes to move this forward? It could be drinking a glass of water, texting a loved one, journaling for 3 minutes, doing 5 squats. The action doesn't need to be impressive, it needs to be doable. And most importantly, it needs to be tracked. Because when you track, you acknowledge. And when you acknowledge, you grow. I started carrying a small notebook. Every time I followed through, I made a mark, and each mark became a moment of proof. On days when I was tired, unmotivated, or feeling lost, I could flip back and see the record. The days I showed up, the chain of effort, the living evidence that I was becoming the kind of person I once doubted I could be. And that's what fueled me to keep going. Not perfection, not external praise, but the quiet, steady belief that I could trust myself again. The most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is that we must be perfect to start. That unless we can do it right, we shouldn't do it at all. But you don't need to do it perfectly. You just need to begin and repeat and refuse to quit. Every small action is a signal to your brain, your body, your spirit, that you are serious about your life. Every kept promise becomes a building block for inner trust. And that trust is what enables you to dream bigger, do better, go further. So start small, but start now, today. For the longest time, I viewed health as a luxury I could afford to delay, something I should probably pay attention to, but only after I had crossed more urgent items off the list. I assumed that as long as I was young, as long as I could push through the late nights, the mental fatigue, the persistent stress, I was fine. I told myself I'd fix my habits when I had more time, when things slowed down, when life became more stable. But of course, life rarely slows down. The more I worked, the more I demanded from myself, creatively, professionally, emotionally. The more I came up against the limits of my own body, and I began to see with sobering clarity that health isn't some optional perk we cash in later. It is the foundation. It is the operating system. It is the unseen infrastructure beneath everything we care about. Productivity, clarity, confidence, emotional resilience, even purpose. And when it falters, everything else starts to wobble. Not all at once and not dramatically, but subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a small crack forming in the base of a dam. You don't notice it until it's too late. I used to dismiss the signs. I brushed off fatigue as a badge of honor. I treated sleep like an inconvenience. I skipped meals or ate whatever was easiest, proud of my efficiency. I normalized being tired, edgy, or mentally scattered. And I wasn't alone. This mindset is everywhere. We romanticize hustle and self-sacrifice as the path to success, until one day our body pushes back, sometimes quietly with brain fog or stomach pain, and sometimes forcefully with burnout, anxiety, illness. When that day comes, and it always does, we look around, bewildered, asking how we got so far off track. But the truth is, our body was signaling us all along. We were just too distracted, too busy, too stubborn to listen. Health is not something that waits patiently at the bottom of our priority list until we're ready to give it attention. It deteriorates quietly in the background when we ignore it. And then suddenly everything costs more. Time, energy, focus, because we neglected the very source of those things. But here's the hopeful part. Restoring your health doesn't require a radical overhaul. It doesn't require you to become a fitness guru, adopt an extreme diet, or transform your life overnight. It begins with listening, with tuning back into your body, not as an obstacle to productivity, but as the home of your life. I started simply. No grand plan, no 6-week challenge. I just began to pay attention. How did I feel after I ate certain foods? How long did it take me to fall asleep? Did I wake up refreshed or groggy? Was I holding my breath when anxious? Did I stretch after sitting for long hours? These observations led to tiny adjustments. Drinking more water, stepping outside for a short walk, shutting down screens an hour before bed. The actions were small, almost laughably so, but their impact accumulated. Slowly my sleep improved, my mood stabilized, my mind became sharper, and for the first time in a long time, I felt grounded, not driven by caffeine or adrenaline, but supported by an internal steadiness I hadn't felt in years. And the deeper truth I uncovered was this. When you care for your body, you begin to care for your life more deeply. You make better decisions. You treat yourself with more respect. You start to act like someone who matters, and that shift bleeds into everything. You stop tolerating relationships or environments that drain you. You start showing up with more patience, clarity, presence. You stop pushing and start flowing. You realize that energy isn't something you chase, it's something you generate. Through rest, through nourishment, through rhythm. And suddenly, the version of yourself you thought you needed willpower to reach becomes accessible simply because you now have the vitality to meet life fully. So if you're waiting for the right time to start caring for your health, stop. There will never be a moment where the demands lessen, the chaos disappears, and the calendar clears itself. Start small today. Drink a full glass of water before your coffee. Walk around the block while the sun rises. Stretch for 5 minutes while listening to music. Choose a nourishing meal not to punish yourself, but to say, I want to feel good today. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier, not because you have to, but because you're finally choosing yourself. These small acts of care are not insignificant. They are the rituals through which you begin rewriting your story. Not a story of deprivation, but one of devotion. And devotion, more than discipline, is what sustains lasting change. There's a quote that resonates deeply with me. Your body is not a vehicle to drive until it breaks down. It is the vessel that carries your purpose. And when you begin to treat it that way, with reverence, with gentleness, with consistent love, you stop seeing health as a side project and start seeing it as your primary responsibility. Because when you have your health, you have the capacity to endure, to focus, to create, to love fully. But without it, every ambition becomes heavier, every moment less vibrant. The version of you who is clear, confident, and calm is not hiding behind a rigid fitness program. They're already within you, waiting for you to care enough to clear the noise and return to yourself. Along this journey, there was one habit, deceptively simple, that changed not just how I acted, but how I saw myself. I began recording my small wins, not just the big ones like finishing a project or sticking to a routine for a month, but the microscopic moments that usually go unnoticed, like getting out of bed when I didn't feel like it, choosing water over soda, saying no to a late-night scroll session, writing one sentence when I didn't have clarity. At first, it felt silly. What difference could writing down something so small make? But over time, I realized that this practice wasn't about keeping score. It was about building awareness, about reminding myself every single day that I was not standing still. I was moving slowly, yes, but steadily. And in a world that tells us only big wins count, this habit became my quiet rebellion, a sacred space to remind myself, I am showing up. I am growing. We often think confidence comes from achieving big things, but real confidence, the kind that carries you through dark seasons, is born from keeping small promises to yourself. It's built brick by brick through ordinary days. Every recorded win becomes a thread in a fabric of self-trust. And when you do this long enough, you stop needing others to recognize your effort. You see it yourself, you feel it, and you start making decisions not from a place of doubt, but from quiet assurance. Not arrogance, just grounded clarity. The kind that whispers, I've been here before. I know how to follow through. I know who I am. I thought of Benjamin Franklin and how even in the 1700s, he tracked his progress toward virtues like temperance and diligence by marking daily charts. He didn't need social media validation. He just needed truth. He was crafting himself intentionally. And so can we. In an age of noise where it's easy to get swept away in highlight reels, tracking your own wins is an act of rebellion, a reclaiming of your path, a reminder that your journey matters. Not when it's flashy, but when it's real. Start tonight. Write one thing you did well today. Anything. Maybe you resisted distraction. Maybe you responded with kindness. Maybe you showed up despite fear. These are not small things. They are the bricks of your future self. And when you string enough of them together, you won't just change your habits. You'll change how you speak to yourself, how you carry yourself, how you walk through the world. You'll move from self-criticism to self-respect. And that shift, that deep internal shift, is what transforms everything. There will be days when you slip, when the momentum fades, when you question whether you're actually making progress. That's when your recorded wins matter most, because they're not just notes, they're proof. Proof that you've done it before, that you've shown up in the face of discomfort, that you've taken action even when it was inconvenient. This record becomes your mirror. It reflects not just what you did, but who you're becoming. And who you're becoming is someone who is serious about their life. Not because you said it, but because you live it. That's the beauty of this path. You don't have to chase massive change. You just need to stay connected to your own effort, to notice, to appreciate, to anchor yourself in the reality that small things repeated with intention shape not just your outcomes, but your identity. And when your identity shifts, everything follows. You stop saying, "I'm trying to change," and start saying, "This is who I am now." And that new identity becomes the lens through which all your decisions are made. You choose better because you know better. You show up more consistently because you trust yourself to. You no longer rely on emotion to act. You act, and the emotion of pride, of belief, of peace follows. You are not the person who starts and stops. You are the person who starts and stays. When I look back at those 7 days, that single quiet week when I committed to just 5 small habits, it still surprises me how something so modest could spark such a powerful inner shift. Not because the actions were revolutionary or difficult, and certainly not because I became a new person overnight, but because those seemingly insignificant moments of follow-through reawakened a part of me that had been buried for too long, the part that believed in my ability to take control. Before that week, I lived under the illusion that real transformation required dramatic commitment, a New Year's resolution, a 30-day challenge, a retreat, a complete system reboot. I thought I needed to find more time, get more tools, study more techniques. But what I actually needed was a decision that this week would not be like all the others, a decision that I would no longer participate in my own delay. And perhaps that's where you are now. Maybe you've carried the weight of false starts and broken intentions for so long that even the idea of change feels exhausting. Maybe you want to believe you still have the ability to shift, but that belief has dimmed beneath layers of doubt and old disappointment. If that's the case, then I want to tell you something that I wish someone had told me when I was at that point. You don't need a miracle. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to wait for clarity. You need 1 week, 7 days, and a willingness to be absolutely serious with yourself for just that short window of time. The beauty of this practice is that it asks very little of you at first, but it offers you so much in return. You don't need to overhaul your whole routine or adopt a complex system of habits. You just need to keep one promise each day, not a huge promise, not a dramatic sacrifice, just one small, clear action that you choose ahead of time. And follow through on whether you feel like it or not. Maybe that action is waking up 15 minutes earlier to start your day with intention instead of chaos. Maybe it's drinking 2 glasses of water before touching your phone. Maybe it's taking a short walk after dinner or shutting down your screen 1 hour before bed. Maybe it's writing a line of gratitude or recording your daily win. Each of these takes less than 10 minutes. None of them will impress anyone, but when done consistently for 7 days, they begin to reshape the very way you relate to yourself. Because that's what true change is. Not a shift in schedule, but a shift in self-concept. You go from being someone who tries to change to someone who honors their word. You begin to rebuild trust with the person who matters most, yourself. That, I've come to believe, is the real secret behind all meaningful transformation. It's not about how many books you read or how many goals you set. It's not about your access to resources or your knowledge of strategy. It's about your ability to keep a promise to yourself. Not once, not just when you're excited, but again and again, especially on the days when motivation is nowhere to be found. Because it's in those moments, when everything inside you wants to give up or delay, that you're given the chance to rewire your identity. You're telling your mind, your body, your spirit, I follow through, even when it's hard, even when no one's watching. And that voice, when strengthened by action, becomes the anchor that holds you steady through storms. You stop needing outside pressure or permission to act. You stop waiting for the perfect conditions. You become your own source of strength. You start trusting that if you say you'll do something, it will get done. And that's not just powerful, it's liberating. Because now your life is no longer dictated by moods or chaos. It's guided by intention. You may be thinking, but I've tried before, and that's okay. We all have. We've all made commitments and failed to keep them. But the failure wasn't in the intention. It was in the approach. We often chase change with an intensity that isn't sustainable. We try to do too much, too soon, with too little clarity about why it matters. We start from guilt or pressure, not from devotion. So this time, do it differently. Don't make it about what you should do. Make it about what you want to give to yourself. Think of these 7 days as sacred, not perfect, not performative, but sacred. A time when you come back to yourself. A time when you choose quietly and clearly to walk with more care, more presence, more truth. Even if no one else sees it, especially because no one else needs to. You're not doing this to impress anyone. You're doing it to reclaim a relationship with yourself that may have been neglected, criticized, or taken for granted. And in doing so, you're building a foundation strong enough to carry not just this week's goals, but every future goal that rests on the belief that you are capable, reliable, and worthy. That's why I say, start today, not tomorrow, not Monday, not when life calms down. Pick 5 small habits that you'll commit to. They don't all need to begin at once. Spread them across the week if that feels better. The point isn't to overwhelm yourself. It's to build consistency. Write your habits down. Put the list somewhere visible, on your mirror, your wall, your phone lock screen. Make it unavoidable. Not as pressure, but as a reminder, I made a promise. Then carve out space for these habits to live. A 15-minute focus block, a quiet hour before bed, a pause between transitions. This space doesn't need to be long. It just needs to be protected, a pocket of your day that belongs to you. And when you complete each habit, no matter how small, record it. Not to keep score, but to keep a mirror, so that at the end of these 7 days, you can look back and see not perfection, but presence. Not flawless performance, but powerful consistency. You will be able to say, I showed up. I did what I said I would. And that, more than any external praise or quick result, is the proof you need to know that you can do far more than you've been allowing yourself to believe. Because that's the quiet truth about change that most people overlook. It doesn't begin with scale. It begins with seriousness, with sincerity, with a willingness to finally take yourself and your life seriously. Not in a rigid, intense, joyless way, but in a way that says, I deserve to live with intention. I deserve to feel proud when I look at how I move through the world. And when you begin to show up like that, day after day, decision after decision, you won't want to go back to the way things were. Because the feeling of alignment, of showing up with integrity, of living with rhythm and presence, it's addictive. It's empowering. It becomes your new fuel. Not because you've become better, but because you've returned to the version of yourself that was always waiting to be honored. A version that is calm, grounded, confident, and fully capable. Not through magic, but through mastery of the small. And if you've read this far, that means something inside you, even if it's just a faint voice, is ready to begin. Ready to reset the narrative. Ready to stop waiting and start embodying. So don't let that voice fade. Capture it. Move with it. Write down your 5 small habits. Choose your start time. Commit, not out of pressure, but out of love. Create space each day to follow through. Track your actions, not your outcomes. Trust the process. And when the 7 days are over, pause. Reflect. Not to critique, but to notice. Who did I become this week? How did it feel to honor my word? What new momentum have I sparked? And if the answer is even slightly more grounded, more confident, more at peace, then you know what to do next. You keep going. You expand the circle. You deepen the roots. And you let those small, quiet wins stack upon each other until you're standing on the shoulders of your own consistency. Because here's the thing, your transformation won't come from a single breakthrough. It won't arrive as one grand event. It will come from every small decision you honor, every promise you keep, every moment you act as if your life is worth being taken seriously is because it is. And the most powerful way to prove that is not with declarations, but with repetition, with showing up, again and again, until belief is no longer something you wait to feel, it's something you carry, something you radiate. And when that happens, you'll no longer need motivation. You'll no longer be tossed by distraction or doubt. You will have become someone new, not because the world told you so, but because you decided to be. That is the power of 7 days. That is the invitation waiting for you now. Take it, begin.